Hi, I am Jim and I was retired. I started this week's topics on my Twitter or X feed by asking what retirement rules of thumb stick out as sore thumbs in your retirement planning. Now, Cody Garrett and some other CFPs chimed in with some of their suggestions. So, this week's video, I'm going to look at 5 rules of thumb I don't use in my DIY retirement. Stay tuned. First, where do we get the phrase rule of thumb? Now, I put some links in the notes below, but no, it's not from English common law. In the mid 1970s, 2 feminist writers started an urban legend that it's English common law that allows a man to beat a wife as long as the switch or the rod that he used is no thicker than his thumb. And they claimed that such a ruling was made in England in 1782 by Judge Sir Francis Buller, who earned the nickname Judge Thumb after this editorial cartoon about one of his rulings. However, none of the recordings of the proceedings had the judge stating that it was okay to beat your wife with a switch no thicker than the husband's thumb. That's just not true. Now, that article that I posted below on the history of the phrase goes on to say that a much older idiom is using one's thumb as a measure of about an inch. It's an imprecise measure, but one that's always at hand. By the way, the New York Post this week had an article about a Norwegian Navy officer who had a ruler tattooed on his hand. Did you see that? Hey, before I go any further, will you please give me a thumbs up and subscribe and hit that bell if you like entertaining ideas from a DIY retiree? Now, I'm not a professional. I'm not selling you a course. I'm simply sharing my perspectives to help you plan for your own DIY retirement. Now, so the first rule of thumb that I'm going to talk about is the 4% rule. Now, it's based on research by Bill Benyon, who found that 4% was a safe withdrawal rate from a 50-50 balanced portfolio for a 30-year retirement. If you have $1 million in your balanced portfolio, you could withdraw 4% or $40,000 in the first year and then adjust that amount by the rate of inflation for the future years. And his research in 1994 said that you would not run out of money. Now, he later amended his research, and in 2021, he said that true safe withdrawal rate was closer to 4.7%, given that inflation since his original study in 1994 had been much lower than historical rates. Now, it's back up again. But on the other side, Morningstar and Dr. Wade Fowle have argued that the number is closer to 3% when you consider low bond yields compared to the original study. Although Morningstar's annual look at that safe withdrawal rate is up closer to 4% now. However, the 4% rule, I've turned thumbs down on that rule of thumb. In my DIY retirement, I decide what to take out each year based on spending needs. Now, before I take Social Security at 70, it's more than 4%. But once Social Security is added to the small pensions that I have, I'll be taking closer to 2 and 3% later years. So this is a strategic withdrawal strategy, not a 4% rule. The second rule of thumb that I'll talk about are the rough measures of how much you'll spend in retirement based on what you've earned or spent prior to retirement. Now, one common form is that you'll need 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income, and that's because you'll be saving money on commuting costs and you won't have to be saving for retirement once you are in retirement. However, these rough measures of what you will spend on retirement based on your working career, I've turned thumbs down on that rule of thumb as well. It is far better for you to build a bottom-up budget of what you will spend in retirement. You may decide that it is far less, about the same, or sometimes even higher than what you used to spend before retirement. You also need to consider health care costs before Medicare and any planned travel that you might take in early retirement. All of those are true variables of what you will really spend in retirement. So the third rule of thumb is an age-related asset allocation rule. Now, they could be like bonds equal your age or stocks equal 110 minus your age. These are all based on the glide path asset allocation theory. If you go to any target date, they're often using these glide path asset allocations. And they start with a high stock allocation when you're young and become lower with age. Yet, now that I'm in retirement, a lot of people swear by the 60-40 asset allocation permanently. You leave it at that. Before I was retired, I had a 40-60 asset allocation because I was building up a cash cushion just in case retirement came sooner than expected, and it did. And I'm glad I had that cash cushion on hand in my retirement savings to protect me from a crash landing of my retirement. Once I went through that period of time, though, I started working back up to a 50-50 asset allocation, the Bill Bangin classic one. And now, 8 years into retirement, I'm closer to a 60-40 asset allocation. So age-based asset allocation rules of thumb, I've turned thumbs down on that rule of thumb as well. I base my asset allocation across all of my buckets based on my strategic needs and my personal circumstances. And we use our own profile of risk tolerance and risk capacity to figure out what the asset allocation should be. Now, the fourth rule of thumb is actually just an extension of the 4% rule, and it's the 25x your expected annual expenses. Once you've reached 25 times your annual expense, they say you're set to retire. Now, this is used in the FIRE movement, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement. However, the assumptions about what your pot will be 25x depends about 30 years of retirement and a 4% withdrawal rate. So I'm not sure that this is anything better than the 4% rule. This is just a different way of stating it. And what happens if you find that retirement suddenly starts, like as it did for me, about a month before I turned 59? Do you keep on working because you don't have exactly 25x? Or do you go back to cutting expenses? Do you build up a budget, a realistic budget for your retirement based on what you have? And what about the SMILE spending pattern, with spending higher in the early go-go years, less in the slow-go years, and more in the no-go years or go to nursing home years? So the 25x rule of thumb, I've turned thumbs down on that rule too. That also goes for the 10x your salary at 67 promulgated by Fidelity. They suggest multiples of salary as goalposts throughout your working career. Yet these are just general guidelines, and how much you need to save depends upon when you start saving, how long you intend to work or are able to work, and other circumstances in your family. Are you saving for college? What else is going on? The fifth rule of thumb is one of the latest. Survey says you need 1.46 million to retire. The Wall Street Journal published this article earlier this week. This number was determined by a Harris poll of less than 5,000 Americans for the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, and they reported that the average figure for respondents was 1.46 1.46 million to retire comfortably. The interesting thing is that it is a longitudinal study and it has some interesting changes. Note that baby boomers have actually lowered their figure for a comfortable retirement as they are now approaching or in retirement. The younger generations have raised their estimates. But all of these are only survey says answers about what Americans say they will need. Have they done a financial plan to find out? Now, worse, when you compare that 1.46 million with the average savings for retirement, which the survey said was only 88,400 in this survey. However, compare that survey of 5,000 Americans with a much more robust survey of consumer finances by the Federal Reserve. Now, these figures here report net worth, which is a much higher number than just retirement savings as reported in the Northwestern Mutual Life Survey. But even when you dig into the survey of consumer finances for the Federal Reserve on details of retirement savings, you see more similar numbers than the Northwestern survey. But the truth is that once you are in retirement, all of your net worth is the source of your retirement savings. Now, I've cited both of those kind of surveys before, and they are informative, especially to point out the differences in generational approaches to retirement. See that video above, for instance. But as I've said before, in every generation, there are savers and spenders. And don't let your financial plan be dictated by the survey. So some survey says magic number, rule of thumb. I've turned thumbs down on that rule too. Envision your retirement and build a plan to get there. That's up to you, not some survey. Now, I will conclude with my standard warning. I'm not a financial planner. I'm not an accountant. I have no initials after my name, so take these as entertaining ideas from one educated consumer to another. Always do your own due diligence and seek out a professional if you need one. See ya.